Season 3 is here for Warzone 2 and Modern Warfare 2. So in this video, I'm sharing with you the updated best graphics settings for console. This will ensure that we have a good mixture of frames per second, graphics, as well as ping and connection. And we start with on-demand texture streaming. This is one of those settings that for a long time I've actually recommended people switch off. It didn't really offer many benefits and affected some people's connection, and actually in some instances even caused visual bugs on the game. I don't know whether there's been a recent optimization on Warzone 2, but on-demand texture streaming looks a lot better now and doesn't cause any visual bugs or noise that I know of. So I do recommend switching it on if you have a decent connection, because obviously instead of downloading our HD textures, we now stream them, so it does take up a tiny bit of bandwidth. For world motion blur and weapon motion blur, switch these off. I don't know what else to say apart from we don't want a blurry game. Film grain, also switch this off all the way down to 0. It can look kind of cool and immersive, but also a distraction, which is why I switch it off. Depth of field I also switch off. This is to ensure when we aim down our sights, the rest of the screen isn't blurred. When the setting is on, it goes all blurry and can stop you from seeing things. Now, just before we get into fidelityfx CAS settings and the rest of the settings, I want to tell you about today's sponsor, PlayVital. PlayVital provide accessories for gamers like us across loads of platforms, including Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, and Steam Deck. They're probably most known for their awesome anti-slip protective cases for controllers. They really are great because you can get a tight grip, ensuring you don't get any button slips, and they really look cool too. PlayVital have loads of different styles for these cases, from the 3D studded, pure, and Guardian variations to the new Scorpion collection of designs. They don't just sell controller covers though, there's plenty more of accessories such as these amazing aim assist rings. If you want to check out what PlayVital have got to offer and how you can use their gaming accessories, you can head over to their new YouTube channel, PlayVital Gaming, or of course head over to their website, playvital.com, the link for which is in the description. And if you use code SPRINGLEAF at checkout, you can get 10% off too. Thanks again to PlayVital for sponsoring today's video. Now back to the settings, and we're on to fidelityfx CAS. So this setting is about sharpening the images, but without putting a strain on the processor and lowering our frames per second. That's the theory anyway, and the correct setting is going to be slightly different for different consoles. So for the newer generation like PS5 and Xbox Series X and S, I actually recommend switching it on and going all the way up to 100. This sharpens the screen beautifully and doesn't have an effect on frames per second. I think if you go below 50 with this, things are still a little bit blurry. Now for older generation consoles, PS4, Xbox One, I'd recommend either running something very low for your cache strength, say around 20, or switching it off altogether. From what I've seen from some of you that visit the channel, this setting can kind of mess up your visuals in general. Some people have complained by putting it on 100, they get some frame loss, so you might just want to put this on very low or switch it off. For 120Hz refresh rate, of course switch this on if you do have the option. This ensures that we can have 120 frames per second. For this you'll need a newer generation console and a monitor or TV that runs it. For field of view you want over 100 really, but I run all the way up to 120. If any of you have gone back to try out Warzone 1 in the past few weeks, you'll remember how frustrating it was that we didn't have field of view, so now that we do, try and take as much advantage as you can from it. Then for the settings underneath the field of view, we want affected on, so when we do aim in, we're still on 120 FOV rather than defaulting to 80, and then for weapon field of view, put it on wide, so the weapon looks smaller and we can see more of our environment. The chances are by seeing more of the environment, we're just gonna get more important intel. For camera movement, put this on least. As you can see, the default settings for graphics on this game are basically that it's very cinematic. It's blurry, it can get all shaky, but to perform at your best, these things aren't gonna help. If you do play third person, leave your ADS transition on third person ADS. This makes it so when you aim in when playing third person, you don't have that insane zooming in and out into first person and third person unless you're using a high zoom scope. For brightness, I actually run all the way up to 70 now, and that's to kind of brighten up a Ashika Island when I play Resurgence, but it's not too bright so that when I go on Al Mazrah, I'm blinded. For safe area, I recommend narrowing this as much as possible. This just represents where your HUD and on-screen information sits. Things like the minimap offer very important intel, so you don't want to be looking too far away from the center of your screen to check out that minimap too often. So the closer it is to the center, the more we can focus on the environment and what's going on, so we can react as fast as possible when someone pops up. Now we move on to interface for the rest of the graphics settings. Specifically, we want to go on color customization. Obviously on console, we don't have loads of individual settings to change what our game looks like. But to improve it, I do recommend using filter 2 for your color filter, putting your target on both, and then putting the intensity all the way up to 100. This makes the game look a little more vibrant and pops some of those important colors. For subtitles, I always recommend leaving these on. On Warzone 2, you've probably noticed that you get bombarded with audio, and a lot of the time you can miss certain things. Sometimes, admittedly, that might be footsteps, but other times it'll be enemy operators shouting things. And obviously, that tells you important information. Either there's an enemy nearby, and sometimes what they're doing. Well, if you do miss that, subtitles will pick it up, so you can just read what's going on. Minimap shape, of course, we want on square. It makes the minimap 25% bigger. Then the rest of the settings you can pretty much leave on default, but I do recommend leaving on a center dot. This helps your centering in general, and helps people focus at aiming slightly higher up than they normally do, so when an enemy runs around the corner, they don't have to adjust their aim from the floor upwards. If you want to check out the updated controller settings for Warzone 2, you can head over to this video. Or if you are feeling nostalgic for Warzone 1, you should head over here and relive the greatest moments of Warzone 1.